I'm just calling in the presence of Mary Magdalene and also calling in Isis and Nephthys and Sekhmet and Hathor, Nefertiti, Inanna, all of these amazing goddesses who are part of the Council of Light, the Council of the Watchtower Women, who are here to mentor us and walk beside us in this time of great change, and who are all in their own right Magdalene's towers of strength that others have lent into in times of great change and transition. So I call them all present here to serve us in this moment of the dark night of the soul and the awakening of human consciousness to its next place of embodied truth through love.
Well, what a profound and beautiful way to begin, Elaine. Normally, I start off the calls, but that was such a beautiful blessing. I want to keep that as part of this offering that we make to people. And that really we're inviting people into a sacred temple time together, taking this 1 hour to go deep, to receive some soul nourishment from one of the most important spiritual figures in history, Mary Magdalene, and the larger lineage out of which she arose and which we'll learn more about today. So my name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I really see Mary Magdalene is at the heart of the larger shift that we need to make on the planet, because it's a reclamation of the sacred feminine in the context of what we've inherited, that could birth the society that we all know is possible, one that is really rooted in our depth and an extension of our love and compassion and connected to our highest intentions. And so we're going to get to explore with Elaine, who you just received a beautiful opening blessing from. Her name is Elayne Kalila Doughty. She's an ordained priestess, psychotherapist, and trauma specialist. She's taught a number of programs on Mary Magdalene for Shift, and today I think is going to be really special and important. So we'll learn more about why. And Elaine, thank you so much for being here.
What an honor. What an honor. And to be in such company of these exalted feminine goddesses that are here to guide and mentor us at this time. And I really feel the rising of what I call the collective Magdalene consciousness, the quickening of that. And I've been working with this for a number of years through the Shift Network, through my own work in the world. And I can feel the coalescing of this consciousness that is now moving through so many of us at this time. So I'm delighted to get to be here.
Yeah, I see the moment that we're in is in many ways the kind of swan song of the patriarchal pattern on the planet, and we're getting a very exaggerated, dysfunctional version of that collectively. And so this harmonization of the deep feminine, the sacred feminine lineages is so important to come, not to just overthrow or dismantle the old, but actually to heal this pattern that we've had. And it's important for all of us to claim it and to align with it. So thank you. So I would love for, so I've always found it's beautiful and meaningful for faculty to share a little bit about their journey. And I think you've obviously had a very multidimensional journey with Mary Magdalene, but particularly the way of the pearl today, the themes we're going to cover. Like, I'd love to begin a bit with your journey through these gateways.
Well, isn't that an amazing invitation? Even the poetry of the way of the pearl. The pearl for me holds such a deep significance for the journey of the divine feminine. I mean, we can see the pearl has been a symbol of the divine feminine throughout time immemorial, historically speaking, in art and literature. And when we really look at the process of what creates the pearl, we really begin to uncover the journey of what I believe is human incarnation, which is that the pearl is formed through an irritant that is received into the softest, most tender part of the belly of the oyster. And through that irritant arriving into the softest, most tender part of the being, there is a wound that begins to form, an irritated space, a place of pain or suffering. And in the process of that happening, the oyster does something amazing. It releases this mother of pearl, this nacre that surrounds the irritant. and builds up over time this smooth, gorgeous, pearlescent jewel that then sits where the wound used to be. For me, this journey of the way of the pearl started with my own mother, my mother line. And I think for so many of us in the feminine, it starts there with our mothers and our grandmothers. And my story, in a nutshell, very quintessentialized, is that my mother was unable to raise me because she was so very ill when I was a baby and when I was a child, both physically and mentally. And it put a massive rift between us, a massive wound in the most tender part of my belly and her belly, of her womb and my womb. And what that wound has driven me towards is this inexhaustible search for what is the meaning of this human experience of suffering, of separation, of pain, of trauma, of heartbreak. Because this is the truth, Stephen, I don't know anybody, I don't know any human being who has gone through this life without being heartbroken. And suffering is seen as being something we want to avoid, or we want to fix, or we want to change. But what if there's a way of embracing the suffering to transmute it into something of great beauty? That has been my life path. I didn't know it. I fought against it. I railed against it. I've been angry at it. I've been furious at it, right? But when I really look at this point in my life, and I'm heading towards, my late 50s now, early 60s, we're in that realm. When I really look at what has been the great teaching of my life, it has been of how to transmute my own suffering and pain into something of beauty and grace. And I believe that there's something around that journey that Magdalene specifically holds for us at this juncture of time.
That is a beautiful metaphor for all of us to understand that it's like what the pearl symbolizes is the irritant becoming a thing of beauty, the trauma, the wound becoming consecrated for something larger and more beautiful. And so let's talk about the history here. So I know that Mary, the linkage, that metaphor is powerful for all of us. And Mary Magdalene sort of gets brought to the foreground as almost out of nowhere in the Bible and a lot of the kind of popular mythology. But you've delved deep into the history and the lineages and the feminine-centric initiatory processes. And I'd love for you to share a little bit of that context and how then that feeds into this understanding of the way of the pearl.
Yeah. So, ever since I met Mary Magdalene, as a child, she was a very scant figure, barely mentioned. Although when she was mentioned, it was in the context of this very elusive but mystical, magical idea of anointing. Right, the anointing oils. In all the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's one story that goes through all of those canonical Gospels, and it is the anointing of Yeshua by Magdalene. So we have to imagine that that's actually an incredibly important story. It trumps the nativity, by the way. Like the nativity, not even the birth of Jesus is in all the Gospels, but the anointing of him is. And so that key around anointing sparked something in me about 15 years ago when I started to ask the question, well, where did this anointing tradition originate? Where did this come from? And what I've discovered through my learning and through being with amazing teachers like my own teacher, Diana Dubrow, who is a living oracle of the Scent anointing tradition, is that there is over a 7,000-year history of anointing throughout every culture. Every spiritual tradition had the use of holy oils to sanctify and consecrate and Christ the holy body. Now, anointing means the Christed one. When you are anointed with the holy oils, you become the Christed one. When Magdalene anointed Yeshua, she was declaring him in that sacred rite as a Christed being, a Christ light. And as we know, Christ is not just one person, just as Magdalene is not one person. They're titles. Christ, anointed one. Magdalene, tower of strength. So it got me looking and understanding that probably Magdalene was trained somewhere to become an anointing priestess. And so then we follow those ley lines back through ancient Sumeria into Egypt, and we go, where were the anointing temples? They were the temples of Isis. So we don't know this because it's not written down. But in my imagination and in my visioning with the Magdalene, she went to Egypt and she would have been trained in the anointing temples with Isis, in the great rituals and the alchemy of understanding what it was to bring those anointing oils and to sanctify them, Christ, the holy body, just as Isis did with Osiris when she found his dismembered body and brought him back into wholeness through her anointing of him. She would have gone to the temples of Hathor, and she would have received the great teachings of the awakening of the eros, the erotic, the sensual, the aliveness of the inner marriage between the internal beloved and the human. This journey, right, of the divine human would have been something that she would have been initiated into. She'd have gone to the temples of Sekhmet and been initiated into the fire of courage and the robe of light that comes as a fierce feminine leader in her world. She would have gone to the temples of Nephthys to receive the deep rituals of mourning and grief as a way of being able to come through life and death to resurrection. So Magdalene doesn't stand alone as being a priestess just of the lineage of Yeshua and Magdalene, or of the early Rose Christianity. She stands in the lineage of all other goddesses and goddess culture that was prevalent at the time that she was walking on the earth. She was part of an unbroken lineage. How could she not be? She would have been steeped in this as a woman that she was, a woman of means. This was not a poor woman. This is a woman from a wealthy family. She would have been steeped in this. This was part of her culture. We've lost all of that knowledge because most of it was oral tradition. It wasn't written down. These stories were not written down. So we're tracing the ley lines through what little fragments we have that we're now discovering through archaeology, through studying the temple traditions, through reclaiming our own imagination. Because for us as women, our lineages into the goddess culture, into the divine feminine, have been completely severed. In the last few thousand years, patriarchy did an amazing job at severing all of our wisdom and knowledge through categorically and systematically demeaning, undermining, torturing, abusing, and murdering women. That's the truth. So when we reclaim our connection to Isis and Sekhmet and Hathor and Magdalene and Nephthys and Inanna, we are reclaiming our heritage, all of us. There is a rich tapestry, and these are not dead goddesses. These are not dead, bygone figures. These are energies that walk within us. They are ascended living energies that live within every single one of us when we start to call them present for wisdom, for support. And my understanding right now is that the Magdalene consciousness, of which all of these goddesses that I'm speaking are part, are the Watchtower women. They are the Watchtower feminine that rises at moments when we are between life and death of a culture and a civilization. You know, we've looked at the world history and we know that every, however many years it is, there's a rise and a fall of a civilization. It's not news. And in these times, there is a moment of possibility that rises out of the dying of the old, where simultaneously something new is being born. And at those times, we are flooded with light and support from beyond this realm to awaken and quicken. And I believe that that's where we stand. In the darkest of the dark nights shines the brightest light. In the deepest of the wounds is the greatest gift and gem. That's the alchemy that they would have been talking of, that Magdalene embodied, that Yeshua embodied, that was part of their divine mission on earth, that they seeded over 2,000 years ago, but what truly was being seeded in the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Sumeria, through to India, through to Babylonia, through to Great Britain, through to, Neolithic Europe. We see evidence of goddess culture existing for 30,000 years prior to Yeshua walking on the planet.
Hmm.
That's a long history.
It's a long history, and I love the way you've depicted the whole arc of things you're talking about, that we're really on this threshold of a
Yeah,
reclamation, and that in order for that reclamation to be whole and to be true, we have to access these ancient goddess lineages that were squashed out and destroyed in different ways. And so that's part of the coming back into wholeness. And so one question I had that I think could be useful for people to understand is moving beyond seeing these beings as historical figures alone, but actually as living, intelligent presences that we can bring through in a more archetypal way. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about sort of your lineage and how you're working with these divine intelligences as sort of doorways into our own potential.
absolutely. Well, so this is one of the things that's fascinated me so deeply and kept me coming back to the study of this, which is that we have the historical Magdalene, right? We have the woman, Mary Magdalene. We even have these historical stories of the goddesses who came down to earth, right? And lived out these seemingly human lives. But what we also have to remember is that those are fields of energy that are coalescing around divine feminine archetypes that live within every one of us, male and female, or anywhere in between. Archetypes are universal because they live within every culture. You will find the equivalent of the Magdalene consciousness in every culture. And by the Magdalene consciousness, I want to be really clear that there is an energetic field that she is holding for us. And you most readily start to connect to that when you start to feel the rising up of a remembrance of your own inner worth, inner nobility, inner sanctuary, your own sense that you are, in fact, standing here as a being who is here by choice to co create the world that we're living in. That is a Magdalene consciousness awakening. That consciousness, the divine feminine, all of the archetypes of the goddess were absolutely eradicated. I don't know about you, but if you think back to your childhood, how many of these goddesses did you meet as a child? I
None.
didn't meet, I mean, we didn't even have Mother Mary. I was raised Anglican Christian. She wasn't even part of the picture. It was just God and Jesus. But there were no women. There was no evidence of the goddess in my lexicon as a child that gave me any sense that I could have any divinity within me. We have gone through a massive forgetting. Some of the most illuminating texts, and this is connected into the way of the pearl, Stephen, are the texts like the story of the fall of Sophia, the Pistis Sophia, the hymn of the pearl, which is the story of Thomas, where he comes down from the heavens and forgets who he is. Sophia comes down from the heavens and forgets who she is. These stories that are the Gnostic apocryphal texts that were not included in the canonical gospels, right, were extradited and hidden, carry the seeds of a story that is a blueprint which tells us that when we come from the divine down into the human, we go through a process of forgetting who we are. It's normal. It's natural. We come into the density of form and we forget who we are. We are birthed through our mother's wombs and we are put into this world. And the journey of incarnation, from the Gnostic perspective and from all of these perspectives of these stories that the goddesses hold, is to remember who we are. To remember who we are through our human experience, not to escape it, but to be fully human. There's this beautiful word that's in the Gnostic scriptures. It's called the word of anthropos, to become fully human. To become fully human means to embrace our humanity and allow the divine love to come to us. Well, how do we allow divine love to come to us when we have been taught that we are separate from the divine, that we are born evil, born bad, born separate, that we actually can only get to the divine through a priest, which is what we've been taught for the last couple thousand years? Then all of these archetypal feminine and masculine energies that we are so deeply needing, that were embodied by the gods and goddesses of old, right, of ancient time are not available to us, except that's the big forgetting. That's the amnesia. They are, because they live within our own imaginal realm.
Mm.
We are able to access archetypal energy through imagery, symbol, story, myth, dream, synchronicity, through the hidden ley lines of our innate and that oracular nature. We begin to see the bigger picture of who we are. And so the way of the pearl is a map for remembering who you are, why you came here, and to reconnecting into the rich lineages of feminine mystery that are here to support us to stand as vessels of love at this time. Mm. Become the Watchtower Women. That's not just for others or the Watchtower men. It's for all of us now. We're all being called. We're all being summoned by her, because it's time. You know, the bride has been in exile for thousands of years, the feminine, and she is coming back to take her rightful place so that we can have a model of what partnership and equality looks like, so that we can start to come together inside of ourselves and see ourselves in each other. If you're missing half of the equation, how on earth can you create anything that's healthy, anything that's vibrant, anything that's real? So we're in extraordinary times, Stephen. And for everyone who's listening, we're looking for these maps, right? We're looking for these ways to, how do I stand in a world that seems to have gone completely mad? How do I meet this moment? I ask myself this every day. What am I being asked of me? How am I to be with all of this incredible pain and suffering and separation and madness that we seem to be seeing happening in late stage patriarchy? That is no small feat. It is not easy to be here right now. But the Magdalene consciousness and the consciousness of those goddesses that trained themselves to stay in the discomfort, to be able to turn toward the suffering and embrace it rather than separating from it. Now that's teachings that are worthy of this moment.
Mm. That was just a profound transmission, Elayne, of wisdom. And I love that you're calling us into full embodiment, not to sort of take inspiration from ancient figures, but to embody that frequency, that depth, that care to help heal our world and rebalance our world. You referenced the map several times, and I think it would be helpful to kind of go through a little bit the gateways of that map and the unfolding of this path of deep sacred embodiment of the current that you're
totally
illuminating.
Well, so there is 7 gateways. And I love that we have 7 classes and 7 gateways, and 7 is a number because it connects us into this profound sense. You know, Inanna had 7 gateways into the underworld, right? There's 7 gateways to heaven. This is a number that tells us that there's a journey underway. And the first gateway is the one I've already spoken of the map of the way of the pearl, which is there has to be a descent from the heavens, from the oneness, from the pleroma into the body, right? And when we do that journey, when we say, yes, my hand is up, I'm next to incarnate, I'm coming back into a human existence because my soul longs for its next level of development and journey that can only happen through a human body, we must descend. And in that descent, we forget who we are. And so in the map, we meet Sophia, we become Sophia, we descend the realms of matter. And it's there that we have to reside for a while in the forgetting, in the separation, in the where did my oneness go? Who am I? Right? These are questions that most of us have asked in our lives. And some of you may be asking them right now. I know sometimes I'm still asking those questions, like, what is mine to do now? What is my purpose here? So after we descend down into matter, we get to experience the wound. And remember, that wound is where the pearl begins to form. And the pearl is synonymous with the robe of light. And I'm going to speak into that in just a moment. But there's a wound of separation which creates that irritant. And it's in that place that we have to learn to listen beyond the hurt, beyond the appearance of pain and suffering, to what is being communicated here. What is the opportunity in my life for me to shift or change this appearance and experience of suffering? What is mine to do with that? You know, artists create great art. Talkers and thinkers create poetry and song and dance. You know, we're all equipped with the ability to transmute suffering into beauty. That is one of the great human attributes. Then, once we have embraced that wound and we felt irritant, there's a challenge that usually comes. And the challenge comes where we have to face into the fire of the truth of our own shadow. We have to look at ourselves and see all the ways in which we are enacting the shadows of humanity, where we have separated from the divine love and where we're in hatred and projection and disillusionment and lethargy and blame and shame. And oh my gosh, our world is so full of this. But if we do not look at that, how can we begin to turn that around individually or collectively? We'll just continue to polarize and separate and be in the perpetrator victim modality that we've been in for the last few thousand years, which patriarchy loves that storyline. Look at any of the movies that we've got. It continues to perpetrate that storyline. Aren't you a bit bored of it? I know I am. So after we've gone through that challenge of the fire of having to really look at ourselves, the pearl begins to take form, because we begin to be invited into the bridal chamber of the heart, where we go, wow, it's really, really intense to be human, right? It takes a lot to embrace our humanity, to embrace the suffering, to not turn away from it into addictions or disillusionments or distractions, but to lean into it. And when we begin to awaken the love for ourselves, the love and self-compassion, the self-forgiveness, this is the Magdalene path. The robe of light, or the pearl, begins to form. That love of ourselves in our deepest, darkest shadows and our deepest, darkest sufferings, when we can bring the alchemy of love to that, we begin to shift it. It begins to transmute. And I don't know any other way than to say this, because it sounds so utterly simple, but it is simple, but it's profoundly difficult to do. The milk of human kindness, the mother of pearl, is unconditional love. And it has to start with self. And that's where we often lose our way, because we think we should be unconditionally loving towards others, and we cultivate that and we forget to cultivate it in the self. But the self is where the journey of true healing happens. So that pearl begins to form there in the bridal chamber. The alchemy of inner union between the divine and the human begins to be melded, and from that the pearl is formed. And then there is another gateway we go out through in this map, where there's a great falling of the veils, where the apocalypse, the personal and collective apocalypse, happens. And that literally means the unveiling, by the way, or the apocalypse. And the unveiling reveals the truth of who we are, the deeper truth of love in all of its 144 faces that we actually carry, each and every one of us, within us. And there the pearl is empowered more fully, because there's a nakedness. When you open the oyster shell, the pearl is not clothed in anything. It is just sitting there in its lustrous, luminous beauty. Just as we think of Botticelli's painting, when Aphrodite rises from that oyster shell out of the ocean, what do you think he is signifying? She is the pearl. She is the absolute beauty of unadorned, naked, divine, feminine presence as love, beauty, grace. Our planet is dying for this energy, literally. Literally, we are dying for this level of beauty and grace to awaken us in our hearts. And so then we come to the Tower of Light in this mapping where Sophia, the one who was lost, remembers who she is, and the robe is woven again into light. And we find ourselves illuminated from within with this awareness that we are divine humans, that we are here as towers of light in the time of great darkness, and that through embracing all of the human suffering, just as Magdalene did, just as Isis did, or Hathor, or any of these amazing, feminine, powerful goddesses, that we are that we have that capacity to embrace all that life gives us and to transmute it into beauty. And that is our role in this moment. And the final place on this journey is the recognition and remembering of the rising of the pearl, where the crown returns, the illuminated crown returns, and we are no longer severed from the above and the below. We become conduits, towers of light, watchtower beings who are connected and fully awake here in our humanity, walking and choosing to walk as love, as a conscious practice. That is the ancient map that we were given thousands of years ago, that has been buried and has been removed from us and been twisted and adulterated so that we couldn't understand what it was that was being spoken to us. You are a living pearl, a living gem. And your work here is to become that illuminated pearl that transmutes human suffering into love. And so it is.
So it is. Wow, I just feel like this blast of divine energy coming through you to all of us, just clearing away all of the hesitation and fears and just saying yes to that vision of divine embodiment. And beautiful, beautiful, Elaine. I know we want to, this was already a very experiential moment of just taking all of that in. And I know you also want to guide us in a particular activation and energetic transmission that to awaken more of this in ourselves. And do you want to begin that now?
Surely. So, my request for a moment before we go inside is just to sit with me for a moment. I'm going to take off my glasses. And I just want you to attune yourself here with me. I want you to let your eyes be drawn to my eyes. And we're just going to connect. And I want you to take a breath and just allow yourself to feel your root and drop in with me. And we're just going to sit for a few moments before we go on this journey to feel the presence of the living pearl. For I see in you all that has broken your heart, all that you have suffered, all the ways in which you have felt lost, abandoned, forsaken, confused. I see all the ways in which you have felt exiled, shamed, blamed. I see all the ways in which you have hurt yourself and hurt others. I see you in the totality of this vulnerable, tender, challenging human journey. And I see in you the living light of love, the seed of the pearl. I see it in you. So, with that, I invite you for a moment to close your eyes with me, beloved one. And I'd like you to feel what truly calls you here in this moment. How Magdalene, Isis, or Sekhmet, Hathor, Nephthys has called you here as one who is a living pearl of the divine feminine consciousness. And so, in your mind's eye, I invite you to look down at your feet and take a deep breath with me. And you're going to start to see that your feet are standing upon an ancient pathway, beautiful alabaster stone pathway. Maybe your feet are bare, or maybe you have on shoes. See what your feet look like. And as you begin to walk down this pathway, you are aware that you are not alone, that there seem to be many others who are also walking this pathway. And it is leading down a beautiful atrium covered in flowers with the scent of roses in the air. There is a breath and a rhythm to the bodies moving beside you. And you are feeling yourself beginning to be swept along in this energetic frequency that feels familiar, ancient, like a remembrance in your blood, breath, and bones. And as you come now down this passageway, you see up ahead of you a gorgeous temple built of alabaster columns soaring up to the skies. It is extraordinarily beautiful, a temple of light and sound, shimmering with pearlescent light, rainbow pearlescent light, pulsating with this incredible frequency. As you walk up the stairway to the entrance of the temple, there is one who greets you at the door. She looks straight into your eyes with her eyes, and she brings her hand to bring to your forehead an ancient anointing oil of rose, the Rosa Mystica. And she begins to trace a sacred geometric pattern of a lemniscate, a figure of 8 across your brow, uniting left and right hemispheres of your brain and your body. As she completes this holy act, she leads you and now the many others who are gathering through the sacred doorways. And as you enter in, you gasp at the beauty. Trailing across all of the walls are vines of flowers, unimaginably scenting this space. Pungent, deep, floral, it is intoxicating. Altars are lit with candlelight, and the entire space is filled with this pearlescent light emanating from everywhere. In the very center of the temple, you are called to come now. You notice that there is a round table, and around that table are 13 chairs, thrones, positioned. You notice at the very center of this round table, there is a rose that is blooming in full bloom, alive. Around this table, as you start to see these throne-like chairs, you realize that there is one that has your name written upon it. Come, stand behind that throne. And as you do so, notice the presence of the other Watchtower women now gathering. There may be some that you recognize, and there may be some who you do not. See who begins to appear in your council, beloved. For this is your council of 12, that you are the 13th of the center, the human boots on the ground, the one who incarnated. But this is your council of light, your council of remembrance. And so it matters not if you recognize who these beings are, just allow them in your mind's eye to make themselves known to you through sound, through image, through color, through sacred geometric, through scent, however they communicate. And as you feel their presence, maybe Isis, maybe Magdalene, maybe Sekhmet, maybe Nephthys, maybe Bridget, maybe the oracles of Delphi, who knows who's in your council of Watchtower women. You feel the moment arise where you are being called to sit in this throne, around this table of oneness, with this guidance now, this full pleroma of this guidance of the divine feminine that is here to awaken through you and your presence and your archetypal interface and imagination, the power of your presence. And so as you are called, I now summon you to sit at this table. And any part of you that may feel a hesitancy or a resistance or a sense of, am I worthy, or any kind of other shadow that may arise, I ask you to embrace that in this moment and choose, if it is in your highest good, to sit at this table anyway. So I'm going to let you feel for a moment what is real and true, what you encounter as you are summoned to sit in this council of light, to no longer hold yourself as separate, to no longer see yourself as unworthy, or who am I, or how come I get to be here, dropping every storyline into the heart of love, that it be transmuted into the living pearl of the frequency that you are being called now to hold in yourself, in your life. That you no longer see yourself as lowly and less than, but you stand in the full truth of the living pearl that you are, that we all are, that is available to every being, should they choose it. This is not about the hierarchy of being better than. This is about the gnosis and remembrance of what it means to be a divine human, an anthropos, no longer severed from the divine light of the robe, the pearl that you are here to inhabit. And so let yourself sit in this space for a moment, beloved, and I ask you to see what you are receiving. What is the gift that this council of light, this council of archetypal frequency of these goddesses, of these divine feminine consorts and emissaries, gift to you in this moment? What do you receive? And let it come to you. It could be a symbol or an image or a word or a feeling or sound. So any channel that it comes, receive it. Don't doubt it. Let it come to you. And then in your own time, receiving that fully into your own heart, into your womb. Let that seed within you, let this moment seed within you a living remembrance of your divine origin and how the divine lives through you, and how the feminine now is rising as this frequency of love, only love, to bring beauty, grace, harmony to all beings. Fierce love, tender love, wild love, compassionate love, integrous love, all the faces that the divine feminine has embodied throughout all time, being made available to you, to all of us right now, in remembrance. And so taking this moment to receive this to yourself, for the journey has begun. The seed of the pearl has been planted within your heart, within your womb, and taking a moment to really feel the calling within your own being, and to take this moment to bow, not in supplicance, but bow in recognition to all those that have gathered around your table, this table that you incarnated to be part of, to be connected to walk with. You were never alone. You have never been alone. That is the lie. And we are now in remembrance. And so with that, we bow to the center of this knowing, this gnosis. And you very gently begin to find yourself coming back to this here now moment, returning to your body, finding your, wiggling your feet and feeling your fingers and feeling your sits bones, and returning to here now, present time, and gently opening your eyes.
Well, thank you, Elaine. That was a profound embodied transmission of Magdalene and Watchtower presence, and a call for each of us to stand in our remembrance. It was truly beautiful, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I want to ask now about how to start to anchor an experience like that in your ongoing daily life, because it's the perennial challenge that we can remember truths in the moment, and then the New York Times headlines or the whatever it is that
I
can start
know.
to kind of pull us right back in.
So
And
true, isn't it?
I want to invite from your own embodied
Yes.
transmission some wisdom on how to
Okay.
sort of make the way of the pearl real all the time,
So
or close.
this is the Magdalene. This is the divine feminine. We're not interested in the ideas, my darlings. We're interested in the embodied beingness of it in your life. Your life is the initiation. Everything that happens in your life, whether it's the headline on the news or the dog that just got sick or your kid that's screaming, or, you know, whatever it is, the craziness of the looming of another world war or whatever, right? We are so mired in distractions and overwhelm and nervous system freak out. Like, it's extraordinary what we're having to live through at this time in our evolution. Magdalene says this: the most simple practice in the way of the pearl is to ask, what would love say right now? What would love be right now? If I was to turn toward love with myself first, how would I be with myself right now? How would I embrace what it is that I most fear right now? How would I turn toward the pain, the suffering, and love it? And choose to have compassion for it, and choose to be the fierceness that refuses to be co-opted into hatred, into separation, into judgment. And if I get co-opted into that, that I see it And I love myself there enough to bring myself back into the heart, to say, oh, wow, I fell out of love again. This is the most simple and the most difficult practice I have ever agreed to in my life. And I remember when I was initiated through a vision by Yeshua and Magdalene. This happened in the UK about 15 years ago. And I was in the Chalice Well Gardens, and suddenly I wasn't in the Chalice Well Gardens, which is in modern day Glastonbury, which is ancient Isle of Avalon, very sacred spot in the UK. I was actually in the Garden of Gethsemane. I was transported, and I was put into a connection with Yeshua and Magdalene at the moment that he was leaving his body to transfigure in grace. And I was very directly asked, do you choose to walk the way of love? And I was so intoxicated by the vision that took place that I had no thought in my mind. I simply said, yes, of course. Magdalene's asking me to walk the way of love. I will walk the way of love. I had no idea what that meant. And I've spent the last 15 years of my life failing miserably at walking the way of love, but loving myself through it. And through that love of my mistakes and what could be seen as failures have just been openings into a deeper way of love. That is the journey. Can you choose to catch yourself in the moment of your judgment? And instead of putting that judgment outside, take it inside and use it to create the pearl. Mm. That's the practice. Most people don't willingly want to do this practice, I find. Because it's much more gratifying to the ego to blame people and shame them and point fingers and say, if they just would stop doing what they're doing, then we'd all be all right. But we know that's not really true. What we see out there lives in here. We know that. So the practice of the living pearl is the transmutation of anything less than love to love. How can I love? And when we do that, we become a frequency of love. And when you walk as love, I promise you, you change everything around you. Everything in your vicinity raises up its frequency. That's the alchemy that we're learning to remember that we all have. We're all alchemists. We all get to transmute shadow into love. That is our birthright as humans. It's one of the most glorious things about being a human, is that we have this capacity to be in the body and feel great love and great sorrow and great loss. And in all of that, we create beauty. We do not get to see the beauty enough. The world is so fixated on the destruction and the hatred and the separation. We have to find and amplify the moments of beauty and grace and gorgeousness and connection and something else that is not about that destruction and that hatred. We must feed that pearl. If we do not, we become lost in the abyss of the archons, in the abyss of the madness of that storyline that has been playing out so long that we're all so bored of it. We all know how that movie ends. We don't want that movie. But if we don't want that movie, we must become vigilant. We must become dedicated and devoted to another way. And it doesn't mean bypassing the pain. Far from it, darlings. It means going full into the pain. It means being willing to bear witness. Do you think Magdalene avoided the pain? She was there at the cross watching her beloved become completely tortured, and she chose to stay. Not because she had to stay because that was her job. She stayed because through her love, he was able to be transfigured into grace. Through her love, through her devotion. So do you not think that we can do that together if we train ourselves? She was just a woman. Yes, she was a Magdalene, but she was a woman, a flesh and blood woman, like we are flesh and blood. So the call is very real. We are living in extraordinarily dangerous times. We know that. But the question is who will you be through this? And it doesn't matter if you're not being it on the large scale in the world. It's on your everyday life. It's who you be in the grocery store. It's who you be with yourself, with your land, with this moment. because that matters. The frequency of love will triumph. The way of the light and the pearl will triumph. It is seated within us, it is foretold. We have to now pick it up and practice it. We must. We simply must.
We simply must. And Elaine, wow, you are on fire today. And this has been an incredible blessing. And I want to spend some time talking about how people can take the next step with you
Yes,
because it is important. It's so easy to get enraptured in the moment and then we go back. And so this call that you've made today is a call into our fullest embodiment of this path, into becoming the pearl. And I want to give people the opportunity to join you in that journey with your support and your transmissions and a community of people dedicated to that path.
absolutely.
So Elaine has agreed to teach a brand new program. I'm sure this is going to be the most powerful Magdalene program yet. It is Mary Magdalene and the Way of the Pearl, a ritual journey with Egyptian priestess lineages to transform wounds and reclaim your inner light. You can find it at the URL magdalenewayofpearl.com. There is no prerequisite except your own soul knowing if this is the right next step for you. If this is the medicine for the moment you are in, you are welcome. Elaine, I'd love for you to share about your intentions for what this journey will entail, and then let's go through the modules and give a preview of how the arc of transformation will unfold.
Well, everything that I have spoken about today is going to be deepened into in this offering. It is a ritual container. We're going to be in a ceremonial space. We're going to be in a space of deep remembrance. I'm going to be guiding you along with the Magdalene and these other Egyptian goddesses and priestesses, and whoever shows up in your Watchtower Council, by the way, because I don't know who's going to show up there. That's part of the magic and mystery of this offering. We're going to be walking together with all of these frequencies. And we're going to be creating together not just teachings and transmissions, but embodied rituals that will guide us through the 7 gateway journey of how we personally invite and create that pearl within ourselves, and practices that we can then take into our lives beyond the program, beyond the 7 weeks that we're going to be together, as a living transmission of what it means to walk as a Watchtower woman together. We will stay connected through the ethers because once we create this living temple, it lives out of time. And that's a very, very powerful remembrance that we are not bound by time, my loves, that we will be doing this in a 7 week format, but its ramifications and its energy will permeate into your life for your lifetime. These teachings will stay with you. And I'm very excited about that because for me, this Way of the Pearl is exquisitely the divine feminine journey of incarnation, not transcendence, but incarnation, fully coming into the living temple of the body. And so we're going to be going through all those gateways together of what it actually means to get into the body and to be here, remembering who we are as humans who are innately divine. Every cell of your being is divine. You are impenetrated with divine light from the moment you are born. Only we forget that. Now, you just said this. How do we bring it into our lives? And I want to say this to you all. The great mythos that we are working with, the Pistis Sophia, the Gospel of the Pearl, the Hymn of the Pearl, these 2 storylines, along with Mary Magdalene's Gospel, are maps for what it means to keep on forgetting and keep on remembering. We will continue to forget. The question is, what is it that has us remember? And that is the journey of this humanity. And I don't know at this time that any of us who don't need some kind of practice, some kind of anchor, some kind of map as to how to catch ourselves when we start to forget why we're here, who we're here to be, and get lost in the morass of the noise and distraction and overwhelm of the world that we're seemingly dealing with at late stages of patriarchal demise.
Wow. Module 1 is called The Descent of the Soul. Enact the ancient pattern of sacred loss that leads to your radiant recovery.
Oh, Well, here we're going to be meeting Isis and Magdalene together. I'm very excited. We're going to be coming into the ritual where we're going to be working with what I call the hidden name and the first cry. And the first cry is Sophia goes through 13 lamentations as she comes down, forgetting who she is, right? And Isis is the one who's there holding the space for us to remember the seed of that pearl, the hidden name. And we're going to do a beautiful ritual about the retrieval of your hidden name, the essence of who you are. So that's going to be that gateway. I can't wait.
Module 2, listen through the waters to heal the wound of separation.
Oh, so here we come. Remember me saying this is when we go into the temple of Hathor and we go into listening through the waters to the irritant, to the ache that remembers the stars, the place inside of us that knows that we are more than just this human body, that knows that we are from divine origins, but that we can't feel it, see it, hear it, or know it fully. We have to go into that separation, into the grief and the loss of something that we can no longer seemingly touch. We can only touch it through the realm of symbol and image and dream, right? You cannot touch God. You can only point toward God. And that is that gateway. We're going to be going into the remembrance of what it is to embrace that which has wounded us.
Module 3, stand in the fire of truth and transform what stands in the way of your soul's radiance.
And here we meet Sekhmet and the Magdalene, and we come into the power of what it is to stand in the fire of truth and confront our own shadows. In other words, this is where we really get to have the rubber meet the road of looking at where we have fallen short of the way of love, where we continue to enact out our own shadow patterns that we have, by the way, inherited from a long lineage of being undervalued, of being called unworthy in the feminine. All of the wounds of the feminine live in this particular module because we all carry some version of the denigrated feminine within us. And how can we stand as Watchtower women or Watchtower men if the feminine within us has not reclaimed her own nobility? And Sekhmet brings the fire of that nobility back to us.
Module 4, the pearl begins. Step into the radiant embodied presence you've always been.
Oh, so in this one, we come to the teachings and the story of Nefertiti and her story of the Aten, the remembrance of the sun, the one that lives within us. And we do a beautiful marriage ceremony between the sun and the moon. Because here's the thing, the pearl is a marriage of the sun and the moon together. When you look at a pearl, you'll understand why. And by the way, we are going to be looking at pearls as part of our journey together. We're going to be working with pearls alchemically. But there is a marriage that happens between the masculine and feminine, between the sun and the moon, between the light and the dark, between the divine and the human, that begets the pearl within us. We give birth to that pearl from that sacred union. And that gateway is what we will be doing in that module.
Module 5, the 7 veils fall away so your soul's true essence stands unadorned.
And here we come into the story of Inanna and Magdalene and Nephthys together, where we literally go through the removal of the 7 veils of anything that is left in our consciousness that needs to be let go of in order for the truth of that pearl to emanate within us. So you're going to see that during the journey, there's a number of times where we come together and apart. This is alchemy. Alchemy means that we form and then we unform and we raise the frequency higher. We clean and purify again to come together at a higher frequency. And that is the journey of the pearl. There's a cleansing and a purifying of anything less than love inside of you that you've been carrying, any old stories that you no longer need to carry forward in order for us to give birth to a new consciousness in the world. Because remember, when you birth the pearl within you, you're also birthing it in the collective because there is no separation here. That's what's real. So we'll be doing that in that module.
Module 6, embrace your spiritual maturity and wholeness, guided by the Egyptian lineage of Nephthys.
Yeah. So here we come to where the robe of light is getting woven anew. And we come into this council of the Watchtower Women, Nephthys being the silent sister of Isis, the one who holds the doorway of death and rebirth. And when you come through that doorway with Nephthys, you die to everything that was before and you enter into a newly illuminated state. And that ritual of taking your place truly within the wisdom of the Watchtower Women is an amazing empowerment ritual that I cannot wait to share with you. This has just been coming online for me recently. This is all a new body of work. So this is getting created. It's the first time I'm teaching this program. So for those of you who are coming in with me, we're going to have an extraordinary time together with much magic and mystery that I'm not even availed of at this moment, because once we get into the offering, it's going to become clear to us what our work together is.
And finally, Module 7, enter the culmination of the Pearl Path to illuminate your sacred humanity from within as you share your light with others.
Well, here it is. This is the rubber meets the road. This is the culmination where we get to celebrate that igniting of the crown, right? The remembrance where the Sophia is no longer separated from the above and the below, but she is connected fully within you, that you remember who you are, and that in this moment you make a declaration of who you choose to be and what you are going to bring forward into your everyday life and how you're going to hold this living pearl within your own being and call others to awaken that within them, because ultimately that is what it means to walk as a Magdalene, is to become a flame of that love, a pearl of that love that begins to become disseminated through your very presence. That's really the key. Magdalene wasn't about telling others what to do. She was an embodied presence of the goddess, an embodied presence of the divine feminine. That's what we've been missing for the last few thousand years, is the embodied presence. And it's not just for one of us to do. This is a collective awakening. And it's not just for women to do. It's for all of us to do, no matter what gender you stand in.
Well, what an extraordinary transmission of a program. This is going to be an incredible journey for everyone who chooses to move forward. And again, there's more detail than Elayne has just shared at magdalenewayofpearl.com. I'll share a few other things about this extraordinary course. So you get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions, which are powerful transmissions, they're community time, you get to ask questions, you do ritual and together and really create a sacred field. You'll also get recordings for every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There's weekly exercises and practices you can do at home to really deepen the embodiment that we're going to be working with. There's community to create a sense of community and sacred sisterhood and brotherhood around this. There's small group time to connect with other participants, as well as a number of extra bonuses that are each designed to enhance your journey. There's a PDF guide from Elayne called Magdalene Path Through the Apocalypse. There's a video teaching on a call to the shadow of the underworld. I love that. You want to share more about that bonus?
Yeah, sure. So that is a primer for all of us so we're on the same page about really what the shadow is and how we can understand that. And this is drawing from more of my psychotherapeutic background and Jungian work, but it's really useful for us to have some language together as to when we talk about the shadow, what it is, and how we can actually work with the shadow as part of this pathway of the pearl. And in fact, I would say that Magdalene's probably one of the first shadow workers. Like she really was, offering us an opportunity to embrace those ideas of our humanity that we are ashamed of. And instead of being ashamed of them, to bring them into the light of love, for where that is where they're healed. Right.
Well, that's just one bonus, and there's so much that's coming through with this course. And then the final bonus that is really quite extraordinary is two of my favorite human beings, Elayne and Andrew Harvey, who has taught more shift programs than anyone else. They've developed an incredible co-creative connection, and it's a video teaching called The Heart of the Magdalene. So that's your bonus that you get if you sign up right away by midnight tonight Pacific
You're
time.
going to want that bonus.
Elayne, say more about it.
Well, Andrew and I are like we're like pearls in a pod. That's what I said to him the other day. We're two pearls in a pod. He and I have an extraordinary heart connection and an extraordinary kinship around the Magdalene and around the importance of this work getting out into the world at this particular time. And we had an extraordinary, flowing, wild, mystic, revolutionary, fiery, loving conversation about who the Magdalene really is in the collective zeitgeist of this moment and why she's calling to so many of us so deeply. And so he shares a lot of stories. I share some stories, and you get to be in the wildness of this love, deep beloved that we are to each other. And I can't wait to share that with you all because it's such a beautiful conversation and so inspiring.
That is going to be, that's got to be so electric. The two of you together, just the voltage goes off the charts of divine transmission. So, what a
Totally.
beautiful bonus to get if you sign up right away. So, it's clearly going to be such an amazing program. We've kept the investment very accessible for you. It's just three payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to begin on August 14th and run Thursdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. And even if you can't make the live times, I strongly encourage you to go for it because you still get the recordings and the community and the transcripts. And it's really about a transmission that ignites your own path at a deeper level. So you can get that regardless of whether you can make the live times. There's some beautiful testimonials from Elaine from previous students, from other teachers. She's a real deal, and you are in very good hands. So you will be blessed, and you will be illuminated. You will be healed. You will be empowered to stand as your full pearl self, your full Magdalene self. So it's really going to be a great program, and it's all at magdalenewayofpearl.com. And when you sign up by midnight tonight, you get the dialogue transmission with Elaine and Andrew Harvey. So Elaine, this is I think maybe the favorite call I've ever had with you. I feel like my hair kind of blown back from some of what was moving through you. It's just like thank you for this time together. Anything that you still want to share with folks who
Mm.
are considering doing the course with you?
Well, let's just drop in. That I mean, I always say this, that if you're called. If you're here, then you're called. There's some part of you that is part of this transmission. See, this is the thing. I am the one here appearing to transmit to you. But that's not how this is working, my loves. What's really true is that when we come together, we as a conscious field of co creative consciousnesses together create the transmission. And that is the way of the Magdalene. And I want to say that because we're so used to having this model of the teacher and the student. Yes, there's that dynamic, but I want to explode that because I want to say, as a living temple, you, all of us as a synarchy will bring through the transmission of the Watchtower women together. And that is extraordinary. And that is how we will change the world, is when we gather together in councils, as this will be, to receive wisdom.
It is the time of the council, not just the
It really
solo
is to be.
pioneer.
And I
So
know you know that, but it really is. And
yeah.
that is my guidance this time. It's the first time I've been called to bring a council together in this way. But I'm very clear that that is what's being called for. So you are, if you're here and you are being called, you are part of that council. You are not separate to it. That is the lie that we've been fed to, by the way, is
Mm,
that somehow there are only a few of us. No, all of us have this capacity.
beautiful. What a profound transmission. Elaine, you're a blessing. Thank
Thank
you
you,
all
love.
for coming.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
look forward to seeing many of you in magdalenewayofpearl.com.
Me
So
too.
thank you so much.
Blessed be.